Hey, it's Matt. Welcome back to the channel. In this video, I'm going to demystify a really complex topic that you've probably heard about, but may not really fully understand. And it does take some thought and some time for it to really sink in. It's called Hart's Law, and it has to do with liquidity bonding and how that affects the prices of coins. So this is directly related to Pulse Chain because it's going to be affecting a lot of Pulse Chain pairs in terms of the liquidity pairs on the PulseX trading platform. And what's really cool about it is that it's a way where you can help back the value of the coins that you're given in the Pulse Chain airdrop for free. You can help back the value, if you choose to. Using some dynamics listed in Hart's Law, you can choose to back the value of coins you like by providing liquidity in the Pulse Chain and Ethereum version pair when Pulse Chain hits the market. So I know this topic is a little bit advanced, but I'm going to break it down and really simplify it here in really easy to understand terms. Let's get right into the basic concept, okay? Hart's Law states that the price of a coin is bonded by its primary liquidity pair. So if you know anything about automated market makers, a liquidity pair is just simply two pools of coins where people trade one coin for another. For example, the HEX USDC pair. People can trade HEX for US dollar coins and vice versa, US dollar coins for HEX. And this requires a liquidity pair. It requires people to volunteer to put up their money on both sides of the equation so that other people can come in and trade in and out, while of course giving the liquidity providers a small transaction fee for providing that service. Basically decentralizing and crowdsourcing liquidity rather than having a central company put up a bunch of liquidity and do a bunch of sketchy stuff with it. Now guys, I'm going to go over a really simple example, okay? So pay attention closely here, alright? Let's say HEX is $1 and Ethereum is $4,000. We're using nice round numbers for simplicity here. Now, assume that all of the HEX liquidity is in the HEX Ethereum pair on Uniswap. And again, we're oversimplifying here, right? We know that there's going to be a HEX USD pair, plenty of other HEX pairs. It really just depends on what the people want to do. And people are trading in and out of all kinds of different pairs, and people are adding liquidity and removing liquidity constantly throughout the day. So it's a very dynamic and complex system. But for the sake of the example, we're really getting into the bare bones. Assume all HEX liquidity is in the ETH HEX pair on Uniswap. That means that one HEX is 0.00025 ETH. Now, if you want to learn more about how prices are calculated on automated market makers like Uniswap and like PulseX.com, check out my previous video. I'll put a link to it right above here. Click on that link if you really care about deep diving and learning into the mathematics behind how this works, because having a foundational understanding of how this stuff actually works can literally make you rich. Okay, so I think it's worth learning about. Anyway guys, if HEX is $1 and ETH is $4,000, that means that one HEX is 0.00025 times the value of Ethereum, right? Because $1 is 0.00025 times 4,000, okay? So let's say ETH doubles in price from 4,000 to 8,000 and then nobody even touches or buys or sells HEX at all. Let's just say nobody cares about HEX, but ETH magically doubles in price. ETH is now $8,000, but HEX, because one HEX is still equal to 0.00025 ETH, well, one HEX is still that much Ethereum, but now Ethereum doubled. So 0.00025 times 8,000 is double 0.00025 times 4,000, right? So because HEX is still worth the same number of ETH, because nobody's trading it, remember in this hypothetical example, well, 0.00025 ETH now equals $2, because 0.00025 times 8,000 is $2. So therefore HEX equals $2. So again, if the price of HEX is primarily denominated in ETH only, and nobody's trading HEX for USD at all, nobody's adding or removing any liquidity, and the price of Ethereum goes up, well, simply speaking, because the price of Ethereum goes up, and because HEX is primarily priced in Ethereum, the price of HEX gets to go up when Ethereum goes up, because it's basically tagging along for the ride, right? Because if Ethereum goes up, and your HEX is worth this much Ethereum, and people are only pricing it in Ethereum, again for the example, well, HEX then benefits with the rising USD price of ETH. HEX gets to go again along for the ride. Now let's do another example that's more relevant to the upcoming PulseX and Pulse Chain launch, okay? We know there's going to be copies of coins on either side. So for example, when HEX is all copied over, there's going to be HEX on Pulse Chain, and then there's going to be HEX from Ethereum that's bridged over into Pulse Chain. Now if you don't already know this, when HEX is bridged from Ethereum into the Pulse Chain world, we have to differentiate it because technically it came from a different world. So we put a little E in front of it, a little letter E, and we call it EHEX, okay? So we're going to have liquidity pairs of HEX on Pulse Chain and EHEX. So let's again use a really oversimplified example. Let's say there is 1,000 HEX and 1,000 EHEX in the liquidity pool. This really simply means that the value of one HEX is equal to one EHEX, right? Because of the ratios there. Now again, the constant product, because this is a constant product market, is 1,000 times 1,000. So K equals 1 million. Again, if you're not already familiar with the concept of constant product markets, check out my previous video about how Uniswap works, because it's really important foundationally for you to understand if you want to make money in crypto. So let's say HEX is at $1, right? Let's say HEX is being traded for $1 over on Ethereum. But let's say in this new Pulse chain ecosystem, hypothetically again, that there's no USDC pairs, okay? So you can't trade HEX directly for dollars. Let's say the only liquidity pair in Pulse chain is the HEX liquidity pair, okay? But over on Ethereum, HEX is trading for $1. Well, if somebody buys 500 HEX, in order for K to remain constant, the new HEX side has to be 1 million divided by 500, just quick algebra math, you know? And that basically means when somebody buys 500 HEX, they essentially have to add 1,000 HEX to make up for it on the other side. So the amount of HEX in the pool is now 2,000, while the amount of HEX in the pool is now 500. Because remember, somebody took out 500 HEX and gave 1,000 HEX, right? So now you're sitting with a pool of 500 HEX and 2,000 HEX. Now, what does this ratio look like, guys? Because in automated market makers, prices are based on the ratios of the coins and the liquidity pairs. Well, again, you've got 500 HEX on one side and 2,000 HEX on the other side. But if you do the math, 1 HEX now equals 4 HEX. So because somebody bought all that HEX and they paid all that HEX in return, they now made the ratio difference that 1 HEX equals 4 HEX. But if HEX hasn't changed, right, if the value of HEX is still $1, well then HEX now equals $4. Okay, and that's assuming that nobody buys or sells HEX or HEX on any other liquidity pairs. That's assuming that liquidity remains absolutely constant. We know these things don't actually happen in reality. It's a really complex system to analyze, but this is again just a very oversimplified example. So again, this is the exciting thing, right? If the primary liquidity pair on Pulse chain for both hexes is the HEX pair, and people are primarily swapping their HEX directly for HEX or swapping their HEX directly for HEX, and they're not cashing out into USDC first and then using USDC to buy back. Instead, if they're able to swap directly, they create a more efficient market and they create better ratios and better liquidity conditions for the price of HEX to go up. So because there's actually no HEX being sold for US dollars in this case, and there's just HEX being swapped from one form of HEX to a different form of HEX, the price of HEX gets to go up. And they both get to be locked together in tandem with each other. Now they might have slightly different variations in price, but eventually with more and more liquidity in this pool, the environment will trend towards a situation where, let's say HEX rises 10%, well HEX might rise, 9.7% because they'll be very tightly correlated with each other. It'll never be quite 1-to-1. Right, but the higher liquidity we can get, and the more we can make the HEX liquidity pair the main central most liquid pair on the PulseX trading platform, the more the prices can move in lockstep with one another. So I really hope this makes sense. Let's go over some quick examples from 2017, for example. Bitcoin was really the only legit cryptocurrency out there in 2017. It was the gateway drug to all the exchanges. A lot of times you had to buy Bitcoin in order to transfer it onto an exchange and go trade that for all the other altcoins. Now, because of this, the price of a lot of altcoins was priced in Bitcoin, right? So when Bitcoin went up, that was great, right? Every altcoin exploded along with the price of Bitcoin, which led to a giant bubble in 2017. And then when Bitcoin was crashing, the altcoins crashed even farther, even harder. And that's because they were primarily priced in Bitcoin a lot of the time. There weren't many altcoins that you could buy directly for USD at that time, so Bitcoin really moved the market up and down together. Now in 2022, we're seeing the same thing play out with NFTs. NFTs are primarily pegged to Ethereum right now. Go on any NFT platform and you need Ethereum to buy an NFT. So therefore NFTs pump harder when the price of ETH goes up, and they also dump harder on the way down. Because if the price of ETH is going down, inherently your NFT that you paid 4 Ethereum for is now worth less, assuming you could still sell it for 4 Ethereum. Which, if people are panicking, that's likely not even the case. You probably would be lucky to make out with 1 or 2 Ethereum, if that. So the panic on the way down amplifies the effect on the way down. It's not good to be tied to other cryptocurrencies that are going down and failing in price. Now again, with Pulse Chain, all the ERC20s are copied over, which is really, really revolutionary. And when this clicks in your mind, you'll realize how crazy this is, okay? Any coin can have a highly liquid P version or E version of that coin, right? Because you're getting all the copies for free. When Pulse Chain launches and the fork happens, you automatically just have a copy over on Pulse Chain. So if you so choose, you can use all the free coins that you just got on Pulse Chain and all the coins you already had on Ethereum, and you can bridge the Ethereum coins over and provide liquidity on the pairs of the coins that you like in order to hold the prices up of those coins and to tie them more closely together. So this is what Richard Hart often refers to as backing the value of your coins on Pulse Chain. Now in the beginning of Pulse Chain, it's unlikely that there's going to be a lot of USDC liquidity out there because it'll all have to be bridged in from Ethereum, assuming that people don't value the USDC that was cloned onto Pulse Chain at a $1 mark still. So if this assumption is correct, a lot of the coins on Pulse Chain will have the opportunity to be bonded in liquidity pairs to their Ethereum counterparts, and thus holding up the prices or pairing the price movements together in lockstep, especially with HEX. So that's what we're really excited about. That's Hart's Law in a nutshell. Again, watch my previous videos if you don't understand how automated market makers work yet. But the mind-blowing thing about all this is that it doesn't have to be a battle of which version is going to win, the Ethereum version or the Pulse Chain version, right? For things like HEX that have a lot of attention around them, that have a lot of strategic liquidity providing optimal conditions, both coins can survive, both coins can go up in price together, and have a hugely bright future ahead of them. So that's the light bulb moment, and that's what we're talking about with Hart's Law. Hope you learned something. I'll see you guys in the next video.